Ever heard of a healer who said he could, like, work his magic from across the room? Sounds wild,
It's
right?
pretty wild.
Well, that's what we're looking at today. This guy caught the CIA's attention during the Cold War.
Yeah, at the height of the Cold War, this was.
Talk about intrigue. We're diving into a document straight from their Stargate program. You know, the one that was all about psychic abilities.
Oh, yeah, I know Stargate.
So get this. The document is called, and I'm not making this up, Magician Walks into the Laboratory.
You can't get more intriguing than that, can you?
Seriously. So this document, it's about a guy named A. Krivoroltov, this self-proclaimed healer. He was from Tbilisi.
Tbilisi. Now, that's a place with its own stories.
Right. And Krivoroltov, he claimed he could heal people without even touching them. People said they could feel heat coming from him, even from a distance.
And to investigate, they used Kirlian photography.
Okay, hold on. I'm with you, but for anyone who needs a refresher, Kirlian photography, what's the deal with that?
It's kind of out there, honestly. It takes pictures of things surrounded by these glowing auras, or what looks like auras.
Or you mean like energy fields?
Well, that's how some people saw it. It was controversial even back then, both in science and paranormal circles.
I bet. But how does it work?
So you put something, like a leaf, let's say, on this plate, and the plate's hooked up to a high-frequency electrical field. Now, take a picture.
Okay.
Instead of a normal picture, you get these bursts of light around the edges. They call them auras, right? But really, it's an electrical discharge. That's what the picture captures.
So it's like seeing electricity, in a way.
Exactly. But some people, they took those busts of light, those auras, as proof of, something more, like a spiritual energy field.
I can see how that would be a point of debate.
Yeah.
But back to the healer, Krivoroltov. What did they see when they aimed this Kirlian camera at him?
Well, the CIA researchers, they were surprisingly meticulous. They documented everything. They even hooked Krivoroltov up to electrical circuits.
And that's commitment to getting to the bottom of things.
They were thorough, for sure. And the document, it actually breaks down their investigation step by step, like chapters in a scientific detective story.
I like it, a scientific detective story. And it all went down during the Cold War, right? This time when everyone was obsessed with pushing boundaries, especially when it came to what humans could do.
Exactly. The fact that the CIA was looking into a healer with this experimental photography, it tells you a lot about what they were interested in back then.
No doubt. So they've got their intriguing subject. They've got this cutting-edge Kirlian photography. What they see when they actually got Krivoroltov in front of the camera, I mean.
Well, the document, it describes some pretty remarkable stuff. Like, they photographed his hands, right?
His hands.
And they saw these unusual patterns of light formations. They even called them amoebae of energy. Can you believe it?
Amoeba of energy. Okay, now that's a visual. And his fingertips, did they?
Fingertips, yeah. They glowed. Brighter, almost luminous. At least, that's how they described it.
Glowing fingertips. You don't forget an image like that. And you mentioned before they even wired him up to those electrical circuits. What about that? Was there any sign that he was actually influencing things, from a distance, like he claimed?
So they did pick up on some, let's call it unusual electrical activity,
Yes.
especially around his hands. But, and this is important, they were careful not to jump to any conclusions.
Good. You've got to be rigorous when you're dealing with stuff like this.
Exactly. The report, it even says almost word for word, correlation doesn't equal causation, meaning just because they observed these things, it doesn't automatically mean he was projecting, healing energy or whatever.
Science. Gotta love it. Keeps us grounded. But still, you've got to wonder, speaking of wondering, people said they felt heat coming from this guy, even without him touching them. If it wasn't some kind of energy transfer, what was it?
That's a question the document really grapples with, and it leads to some seriously fascinating possibilities. One theory they had was about Krivoroltov's skin.
His skin.
Yeah, like what if his skin was somehow able to store electrical energy? They called it his dielectric properties.
Dielectric. Okay, you might have to back up and explain that one. Even for a deep dive, that sounds a little dense.
Fair enough. Think of it like a sponge. A sponge is made to soak up water, hold on to it. A dielectric material, it's like a sponge for electricity. It can store that electrical energy. And our bodies, believe it or not, they can act kind of like capacitors. Not exactly, but you get the idea. So maybe Krivoroltov, he could somehow influence that, like create a stronger electrostatic field around himself.
So he's like a human battery, amping up his own bioelectricity. That's kind of amazing, if you think about it.
It is pretty wild. But then that would mean we're all influencing each other's bioelectricity all the time.
Right, just walking around zapping each other with good vibes or whatever. Okay, maybe not. But you see what I mean?
No, you're onto something. And it gets even more complicated. See, the document, it brings up another possibility. What if it's all in the mind?
You mean like the power of suggestion?
Exactly. That sensation of heat, maybe it was a psychological response? Think about it. Krivoroltov's reputation, the expectation of a healing experience, it could all trigger a placebo effect.
The placebo effect. We all know about that. It's amazing how powerful our minds can be. Like, you think you're getting sick, feel awful, but then it turns out to just be stress. Or you're tired, didn't sleep well. Our brains are something else.
That's exactly it. And that's what makes this research so fascinating. It's not just the physical stuff, the bioelectricity, but the psychology too, the culture even. This document, it's a glimpse into how back in the day science was trying to wrap its head around the stuff it couldn't explain during a time that was already full of change and uncertainty.
So we've got science, Cold War spies, and the mysteries of the human body all mixed up. But this isn't just about one guy in Georgia, right? This document, it connects to something bigger, like bioelectricity. And if it plays a role in all this healing stuff.
Oh, absolutely. The CIA, they weren't just interested in Krivoroltov, they were looking at the bigger picture. Bioelectricity, what it could do. This document even talks about how Kirlian photography, for all its weirdness, it seemed to show something real. That living things would give off these electrical fields, and those fields, they change. Maybe because of health, maybe something else. Who knows?
Like our bodies have this whole hidden language.
Yeah.
Written in sparks.
Exactly. And the Kirlians, they didn't just look at people either. They did experiments with plants too. Did you know that?
Plants? Like houseplants.
All kinds of plants, actually. They found that those Kirlian pictures, the ones with the auras, they could actually show if a plant was sick, like even before you could see it, just from the picture.
So it's like the plants were sending out an SOS, an electrical one, and the Kirlians could pick it up.
Oh.
Wow. But, okay, back to human health for a sec. This document, it mentions something about blood vessels, right? Like spasms, and how they showed up on the Kirlian photos.
Yeah, they noticed that. The Kirlians, I mean. Like, if someone's aura looked off, messed up, it might line up with problems in the body. Spasms, yeah, that was one of them. They even thought that maybe, and this is a big maybe, but maybe Krivoroltov's healing, if it was real, maybe it worked by, like, influencing these bioelectric fields to ease the spasms.
So for all these walking electrical systems, what else can those fields tell us? Can we tweak them, make ourselves healthier? That's the big question, right?
It's a huge question, and honestly, it's one that modern science is still trying to figure out. We know now that our bodies, they use electrical signals for everything. Your heart beating, your muscles moving, your brain thinking, all electricity. This crazy dance of ions and charges.
So like we've each got this internal communication network, buzzing away.
Exactly. But here's the thing. This idea, this body's energy thing, it's not actually new. Think about acupuncture.
Acupuncture, okay, yeah.
Ancient practice, right. Traditional Chinese medicine, they put needles in specific spots, these meridians they talk about, to get the energy flowing. They call it qi.
Right, those energy pathways. But how does that fit in with, the bioelectricity stuff?
Western science, it doesn't use the word energy quite the same way. But it's interesting, those acupuncture points, a lot of them, they line up with places in your body that have a ton of nerves, blood vessels too. So is it possible that poking those spots with needles, it sets off a chain reaction, like bioelectrical responses that could do all sorts of things, help with pain, bring down swelling, even change how your organs work?
Like a tune-up for the electrical system.
Yeah.
And speaking of systems, didn't this document also mention something called Kenrak, some Korean system, I think? Something about pressure points, too.
It did. Kenrak, yeah. It's another one of those practices, putting pressure on certain spots on the body to, restore balance, help the body heal. Makes you wonder, what if those ancient healers, they were onto something?
Right. Like they figured out how to work with the body's electrical system way before modern science even knew it was there.
It's a cool thought. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This CIA document, it's not saying, hey, alternative medicine is the answer. It's actually pretty clear about needing more research. They even say that the Kirlians themselves, they had trouble getting the same results every time with Krivoroltov.
So they couldn't prove it. That makes sense. In science, you've got to be able to replicate the results, right? Otherwise, who's to say it wasn't just a fluke?
Exactly. Replicability, it's super important. If you want something to be taken seriously, scientifically, it can't just happen once. Other researchers have to be able to do the same experiment, get the same results.
Makes sense. So where does that leave us with Krivoroltov? Was he legit? Just a really good showman? Something in between?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the document, It doesn't give us a neat little answer. That's part of what makes it so interesting, I think. We're left with this puzzle, this blurry line between what we can explain with science and what we can't.
The unknown. It's a good reminder that we don't have all the answers. When it comes to the human body, our minds, reality itself, there's still so much to learn.
And that's the beauty of it all, isn't it? Science, it's not about having all the answers. It's about asking the questions, being open to the mystery.
I like that. So on that note, we'll leave you to ponder these mysteries. Was this guy Krivoroltov really tapping into something? Or was it all smoke and mirrors? We may never know for sure. But hey, that's what makes these deep dives so much fun. This has been a wild ride through the world of healers, cameras, and the CIA. Until next time, stay curious out there.